Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. I am your host, Candice Minott, Community Engagement Coordinator for Co-operatives First. And this webinar is the second installment in our Starting a Childcare Co-op in Manitoba series. It aims to share with you some key considerations when planning to start a childcare co-op, strategies for building community support and involvement, common hurdles, and solutions that are relevant to Manitoba. I will also share with you a preview of our upcoming in-person event, and we're so excited about it. It's the Co-operatives First Childcare Boot Camp, and that will be held in Brandon, Manitoba. So let's start by ensuring everyone is muted while we are here together. We will have lots of time for discussion, so make sure you know how to unmute yourself. And please use the chat function of the webinar and share your name so we can know where you're joining us from. Okay. I would like to start off by doing a land acknowledgement. This event is taking place in a virtual space. And I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are located on Treaty 6 territory, home of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dene, Dakota, Nakota, and Métis nations. We acknowledge that this land was not ceded, but that the purpose of the treaties was to ensure that the land would be shared. Now, if this is your first time with Co-operatives First, welcome. We're glad to meet you. Our business development organization promotes cooperatives right across Western Canada. As mentioned before, I'm Candice Minott. I'm responsible for community engagement and also client relationship management. And I do support childcare co-op development right across Western Canada as well. Here at Co-operatives First, we do this work through the generous support of our funder, Federated Cooperatives Limited. And in 2024, we received PERSCAN funding to support the creation of childcare cooperatives across Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Alberta. Now, if you're working with a co-op or you're just curious about how a co-op might work, you can get in touch with us. We can help you. We are supporting co-op startups with incorporation, business planning, and governance support as well. So today for our webinar, we have quite a jam-packed agenda, but starting us off, we're so pleased to welcome Dr. Susan Prentice. We're going to have a little childcare policy discussion with her. And just to give her a warm introduction, Dr. Prentice, the Duff Roblin Professor of Government at the University of Manitoba, focuses her research on social inequity and social and family policy, specializing in childcare policy. Her work, grounded in feminist political economy, addresses the critical interplay between care, gender, and social movements within Canada. With a PhD from York University, Dr. Prentice has developed an interdisciplinary research program that applies historical and sociological analysis to her study areas. In her role, she leads the childcare policy stream of a significant SSHRC partnership grant aimed at rethinking Canadian family policies. Dr. Prentice is committed to public sociology and collaborates with various social movements, policymakers, and media to mobilize knowledge for broad impact. And just to add, she was a recipient of the 2023 Trailblazer Award at the University of Manitoba. And in 2022, she received the Queen Elizabeth II Platinum Jubilee Medal. And we are so privileged to have her as a member of our Co-operatives First Childcare Advisory Committee. And we are so happy to have her here today. Welcome, Dr. Prentice. You're muted, Susan, so you can just unmute.
Thanks for that, Candice. Thank you for that very kind introduction. I have a couple of comments to make to kind of launch the conversation about co-ops.
Sure.
But for everybody who might have remembered an old-timey kind of parent co-op, I want to start by making a strong distinction. There was a moment in Canadian history, largely in the 70s and early 1980s, when a parent cooperative childcare center was parent-owned and operated, and often parent-run. Often it required parents to commit to sometimes as much as 1 or 2 days a month of actually providing the services. Um, and it was a very, very labor-intensive way for parents to start up childcare. It's a moment and a way of organizing childcare whose time has come and gone, although the cooperative principle still lives on. And the kind of childcare co-ops that we're thinking about here in this model is not that kind of co-op. So I just wanted to set that aside for anyone who might be thinking about one way of doing a parent co-op childcare. What we're thinking about in this project is a way to use the very important, maybe more important than ever, cooperative principle to help solve the policy challenges of childcare deserts. All
Right.
across Canada, we know that there are not enough services. We know that the market, supply and demand has not worked out, that relying on the market itself hasn't built us the kind of services that we need. And so Co-operatives First has been pioneering a way to use the cooperative principle to intervene to help supply services. All provinces have made promises to expand their childcare services. You've heard about the famous $10 a day plan of the federal government. Most provinces and territories like ours signed on in 2021. And in the case of Manitoba, we've made a commitment to grow by 23,000 new childcare spaces by 2026. So we have a big task ahead of us, and this cooperative principle can help. The idea is to think about bringing together a range of community stakeholders, many of whom would be institutional players. So this might mean, for example, school boards, municipalities, established community development offices, First Nations, faith communities, institutions which are embedded in their communities, and ask them to help spark a childcare co-op, which can and would no doubt have parents on its board as well, but would not be exclusively owned and operated and run by parents. We ask them to do something almost impossible at the busiest time of their life. So this
Right.
cooperative model, nonprofit in incorporation, is essential in Manitoba if we want to receive provincial funding, which these days includes a significant share of dollars from Ottawa, which flow through the province. We very wisely have said that we'll only spend public dollars on not-for-profits. So this is a model for starting a not-for-profit that's eligible for funding and would be eligible for the $10 a day, which in Manitoba rolled out on April 1st, 2023. So
Yes.
this makes people eligible for funding.
Mm.
It gives great value for taxpayer dollars. It's efficient from a taxpayer point of view because it means that public dollars create public resources which stay in the not-for-profit and public sector.
Which
And
is so
everything we know.
key. Yes, it's so key, and I think, when we think about this topic some more, and I'm so happy that you're really digging into it, Dr. Prentice. So why are non-for-profit models such as co-ops crucial for delivering equitable childcare services, particularly in rural, remote, underserved communities?
Right. Because most of the time in Manitoba, we have a childcare center because volunteers got together and started it up. That's 95% of the centers that we have. And about 5% of the centers we have are owned as for-profit businesses. They are ineligible for funding. They don't participate in the $10 a day. We'll set those aside. They're a small share. But for most community groups, they don't have the experience, the wherewithal, the comfort, the connections, the skill set to start this up. And so this co-op model can bring together institutional players and help bring services to places where they're needed.
Thanks for addressing that and thinking about some of the key challenges specifically for non-for-profit childcare centers and co-ops as they face the current landscape in Manitoba. How can they really overcome these challenges?
I would say there's really two pinch points. I mean, let's imagine a center has been set up. Let's just leave the magic of how that happened behind us. It's set up. It's one thing to ask parent volunteers to maintain an existing service. They own it, they operate it, they're the employers, they set the policies, they oversee a budget, they run it. It's a major, major commitment, and it's how we deliver childcare services in Manitoba. But if it's hard enough when a service is already running, take a few steps back and imagine how challenging it is to get the activation energy to start something up.
Right.
If you remember your old school chemistry lessons, activation energy is often higher than maintenance energy. So what this project is going to provide people with are the tools and resources and coaching that can help people actually get started. Because that, I think, really for many people is the critical challenge. It's an almost Herculean effort to ask a group of volunteers to suddenly create services out of nothing. And so this co-op first project sort of steps into that vacuum and provides resources to help people get things going.
Yes, and I think you preempted my third question in terms of, from your perspective, in what ways do you think the cooperative model empowers local community to actively participate in childcare decisions and policies? And we know that you mentioned, parents really don't have the time, but they want to have some type of involvement.
Mhm. Right. Well, this is where I really think like a sociologist. If we're especially thinking about small towns and rural areas, Winnipeg is its own issue. We can talk about that a bit separately. But um, in a small town, a childcare center is a valuable community asset, right? It perhaps makes your town an attractive place for a doctor to come to or for a dentist to set up. It enables you maybe to have your teachers living locally, right? It enables professional families to establish. It maybe helps keep young people in a region. So everybody benefits when there's childcare. And yet the classic way we've organized this asks only parents to start them up and run them. Well, a bit like we asked hospitals to only be set up by sick people or only victims of crime
Right.
to the police system, right? We all benefit, and yet there haven't been mechanisms for getting more players to the table. So this co-op model that we're talking about, this version 2, as I think of it, where we bring together community stakeholders to help oversee a governance board, which allows parent voices but doesn't exclusively rely on parents, strikes me as the strongest way to create community buy-in and recognize that community assets benefit us all.
Yes, and I think it's key. And I'd love for you to share. This is a bonus question, but you do a lot of work on the multiplier economic effects of childcare. Could you briefly just share with our participants what you have found from your research?
Yeah. So one of the things to remember is that childcare is a great job creator, right? It's a very green economy that's very labor intensive. So one of the things that happens when a childcare center sets up is it creates jobs, and jobs create value. So the first thing to remember is that it's a job creator. The second thing to remember is that in addition to the jobs the service provides, it also enables many parents to go to work or study. And when you run things like those figures through economic I/O figures, you discover that childcare more than pays for itself. We've discovered that every one job in childcare creates more than another job. We've discovered that every dollar spent in childcare in Manitoba returns at least $1.58. And this is not a unique Manitoba finding. Even the Conference Board of Canada has said that childcare expenditures more than pay for themselves. And we can look a couple of thousand kilometers east to Quebec, which got ahead of the rest of us starting in 1997 when they began their $5 a day plan. Quebec is now discovering that for every $1 spent in Quebec, there's $3.50 worth of economic benefits that come to the province.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So, I mean, for anybody who's concerned about the financial bottom line, you can be assured that there will be economic benefits. The costs more than pay for themselves. The challenge is, given that the service is so valuable, it does so much good, why can't we start up more? And it's largely been because of this incredible challenge of startup, which we're trying to intervene in.
Right. And looking ahead, what impact do you foresee non-for-profit childcare co-ops having on the overall landscape of early childhood education, I would say in Manitoba and in Western Canada as a whole?
Mhm. Well, we're trying to expand the ways in which we can deliver services to families and communities, to share some of the burden, to find opportunities for parent involvement, but to also bring other stakeholders and other engaged people to the table. I mean, if we can't build the childcare system that we need, I worry, because one of the things we have seen in many other provinces has been the arrival of for-profit services. And I'll just do a little digression on this. Um, there are real concerns with relying on especially large for-profit services to provide care to vulnerable people. If you followed the news, you might remember that in Alberta, where 75% of the childcare spaces are for-profit, there have been some terrible developments recently. Some kids have been sickened by E. coli at commercial kitchens. In Edmonton, just 2 weeks ago, a center had to be closed down because they were perpetually understaffed and leaving children unsupervised. We know from large quality studies that the quality is troubling. And from a stewardship perspective, it's very inefficient to allow a private owner to accumulate a privately owned asset like a childcare facility and a business through taxpayer dollars. But at the end of the day, somebody privately owns it, can sell it and profit the difference and walk away. And so it doesn't keep the value circulating for the public. So my strong concern is that if we can't find effective ways to build not-for-profit and public services, we will have to fight off a commercial sector, which is probably salivating at the idea of open-ended dollars and a huge demand. And if they could just get a piece of that pie, undoubtedly they'll be angling. I'll just point out that if you were watching the news, you might have seen last week in Ontario, some rolling closures by commercial operators in Ontario
Oh,
who
yes.
don't like the funding model. They've been guaranteed an 8% profit, and they don't consider that adequate. So just imagine every $1 of public investment, they're looking to take at least a dime of each dollar for private benefits, rather than putting that into services and staffing and early childhood educators. So
Right.
even from a responsible stewardship money, there are strong reasons to go this way, because if we don't, we risk that way.
Hmm. And especially in Manitoba, I know there has been a lot of discussion about what's happening, and you've been very present in that discussion. And is there any final comment or reflection you'd like to leave for the participants as we, continue this conversation and have this dialogue with communities? What would be your number one encouragement to economic development officers, persons working within the sector?
Mhm. Well, it would be to please take this issue very seriously. I think for a long time, community economic development offices in regions and municipalities have seen economic opportunities outside of the care economy.
Mhm.
And I think if we've learned anything from the pandemic, it's that the care economy is actually the infrastructure that makes the whole system work. When you don't have childcare, people can't get to work. And that affects not just parents, but everyone who depends on someone who depends on childcare. And so this is an issue really, it's not just a private issue, it's not just a family issue, it's not just a parent's issue, and it's not just a women's issue. But it's really something to be taken seriously as a way to incur the economic health and vitality of all parts of the province. So I'd like to see this really taken up very vigorously. I should have said at the beginning that, like at least a couple of you, I'll have to go at 1:30. So that's why I'm barreling through all my comments early. I think Candice is going to invite anyone who might have questions to ask them now, and then move on to the rest of the session after I've had to leave.
Yes, so we're so thankful, Dr. Prentice. We know that your time is limited. However, what you would have provided in terms of insights is invaluable. And as usual, we could have talked about this topic for the whole day, but thank you so much. Thanks for sharing with us. And participants, if you want to ask questions, feel free to leave it in the chat. We will send a follow-up with Dr. Prentice's response. So thanks, Dr. Prentice. You have a wonderful rest of day and
Thanks,
take
everyone.
care. Okay, so that was a lot of food for thought from the discussion. And moving on, we just wanted to give you some perspective of what's happening in Manitoba and also to give you a real life case study. Client that we've been working with in Saskatchewan has a really powerful story. And this is what actually started our development of this blended approach to childcare development. You would have heard Dr. Prentice speak about it, having institutional partners, the municipality, various partners involved. It's really a community-led initiative, and it's a story that we really enjoy sharing. And I'm going to share a little bit about their story with you. But first of all, for those of you who may not know what a co-op is, just to let you know that a co-op is an incorporated business. It's owned by a group of people. They have the same goal and they make business decisions together. And of course, it offers shared benefits. One of the things we like to reiterate about co-ops is that it operates off of the principle of one member, one vote. So there is democracy, there's equal decision making, and it makes it very ideal when you think about community-led initiatives. Why is a co-op a good fit for childcare? As Dr. Prentice had mentioned, it's owned by the community members and all the partners, whether it be the local entities, municipalities, or parents who really want a say in what happens in the childcare center. It's able to meet the needs of the community because it's a service-oriented organization with a not-for-profit model. As Dr. Prentice mentioned, there is a different focus. There is a focus on providing quality care. There's also a focus on being of service to the community. And especially as we look throughout Western Canada and in Manitoba, the areas that really need childcare often are rural, remote communities. And the cooperative model is ideal for this type of situation. Also, there are underserved groups who could benefit from this model as well. So when you look at Indigenous communities, newcomers to Canada, these are groups who can mobilize, join forces with partners, and really come up with good initiatives to start childcare co-ops. Now, why childcare and why now? First of all, we had mentioned it. It's a national problem, right? So it's not just happening in Manitoba, it's happening right across Canada. And there has been a national focus from the federal government at the provincial level to have that access there. And we just want to put forward that we are focused as an organization in the not-for-profit childcare development, right? We do recognize that there are for-profit childcare centers that are in various provinces. However, as part of our mandate, we are focused on not-for-profit childcare co-op development. What we've said too is that we have found working with communities under a blended approach to partnership in which the community has the municipalities, institutional partners, parents, community leaders involved. It really supports this endeavor. One, because yes, it is an expensive venture. And two, the ownership and retention of assets in the community is one of the key things that we want you to consider as well. So we do have a group from Saskatchewan that we'd like to share their story with you, just to give you some insights in their own words, how they were able to start a childcare co-op. And that group is Maple Creek. And this is a small town in Saskatchewan. And we're going to share their story with you as well. Okay.
The need for childcare in Maple Creek is very high. I've talked to many different parents, and we all have the same struggle of trying to find a spot to put our child in. Right now, all we have is private day home.
Okay, I get to understand we're not able to hear the video. So I am going to start the video again. Thank you all for your patience.
The need for childcare in Maple Creek is very high. I've talked to many different parents, and we all have the same struggle of trying to find a spot to put our child in. Right now, all we have is private day homes, and the waiting lists are extremely long, and it's very tough to get into those private day homes.
People are not able to even move to our community because they don't have childcare arrangements.
There's 3 of us who work on economic development in the region. One for the Nick and Eat, that would have been Cherish Francis, and Christine Hoffman for the RM. And the 3 leaderships were working together at that time, and we were looking for a project that we could do together. We talked about the lack of licensed daycare in the community. It is actually a focus of the community to work all 3 leaderships together because we all benefit.
We were able to construct our own facility. It wasn't necessarily our main focus when we started. We all thought that we would just buy a building in town and renovate it, and we'd have a daycare up and running within a matter of months. As we progressed down the road, we realized that it's a lot bigger task than what we initially expected. Purchasing a building and renovating it just wasn't going to be a fit for us. There was just no buildings in town that met the requirements of the Ministry of Education for this program.
I think the co-op structure it allows the parents to be very involved in the care that their kids are participating in. So it gives them the ability to control a lot of what's happening in a facility.
What I would tell other communities is that the co-op model has some really good advantages. It really gives everybody at the table a voice. It's really good for down the road when parents necessarily aren't still going to be on the board, that they can turn it over to the new parents and there's going to be continuity with the co-op. And it's really a community project at the end of the day. The entire community is going to benefit from the daycare, whether there's parents involved or whether it's the local hospital or the Board of Education trying to hire teachers. So for us, the co-op model just was a really good fit in order to get up and running quickly and efficiently and work towards our goal of opening a daycare facility in Maple Creek.
So that was our client, Maple Creek, small town, Saskatchewan. However, very powerful and impactful story there. They were able to mobilize their community to start a much needed childcare center. They are still in the process, about to start building. However, they have been very, very persistent, and they were successful in getting government funding, and they're moving on to the next stage. So many of you may ask, how did they get it done? And this is something that we know you also can replicate within your own communities as well. So we just want to share a little insight into what they would have done and what support they would have received. So from Co-operatives First, we help them with Incorporation, providing a feasibility study. Also, their grant application and submission to the government of Saskatchewan as well. Business coaching, that's key with the clients that we work with. We do have our own workbook and financial model templates. So we support groups through that process as well. So we help you to develop your own business plan, so to speak, and we help you to get financing ready. So you will be at a point where you'll be able to approach financial institutions for additional funding. We do support with facility planning as well, and we gave them governance training support. Now, from a partner's perspective, and this is something that we've been speaking about, a blended approach to childcare co-op development. I think Maple Creek, they were able to mobilize their partners in a very efficient way. The town of Maple Creek provided land and tax abatement. They had the support of their economic development officers from the town of Maple Creek, the Nittany First Nation, the rural municipality of Maple Creek, and they all worked together to get this project done. And in terms of the province, they provided space development grants and startup funding as well. So drilling down to Manitoba and the funding that can be expected. As Susan had mentioned, Manitoba had signed their agreement with the federal government in 2021 and made a commitment to create 23,000 new spaces by 2026. And also, importantly, to reduce parent fees to an average of $10 a day by 2026. Now, from what we've seen across Western Canada, Manitoba has a very generous capital grant program, if not one of the best. And they have also embarked on their own capital expansion through their own efforts as well. So there are a lot of avenues within Manitoba, but we're just going to focus on the capital grant program, which we would support groups to access. So with their early learning childhood building fund, these capital grants cover up to 60% of eligible costs for new childcare spaces. So they have two streams, infant and preschool spaces, and they will cover up to 60% with no maximum limit. As it relates to school age spaces, provincial funding will cover up to 60% with a cap of 1.2 million. Manitoba also offers a tax credit program, which can be claimed over 5 years, $10,000 per space created. And once the center is up and running and operational, there are ongoing operating grants, staffing grants, and of course, the access for families for the $10 a day childcare. So in terms of Co-operatives First and how we can help, we can walk you through that incorporation process. Of course, we support accessing grant funding. This too will vary by province. Manitoba, they have their own licensing regulations, and we help to support groups who want to access this grant funding. As mentioned before, we are a business coaching organization. So we do offer business coaching for groups who want to start co-ops, specifically for childcare co-ops. We have our internal tools, a workbook, and financial templates that we do take you through. We have governance training support. And also, one of the key things that we found from working with groups is that they do require support with facility planning. So we do have both an operational expert who will help through that process, and also in terms of your operating budget and guidance, we're able to provide that information so that when you're finished with the coaching process, you will be financing ready. which is also key because as mentioned before, the government financing will really take you a substantial way, but you will also have to establish where you'll find that additional funding from as well. So these are key points. What we can say in terms of or recommendations for us to take you on as a client. First of all, we are a cooperative development organization, and we are focused on groups who want to incorporate as a nonprofit co-op, right? So we're looking for community groups who want to operate childcare centers, and childcare centers provide services for children aged 6 weeks to 12 years with a maximum capacity of up to 90 children. And we're looking for community groups who will have a diverse steering committee, typically 3 to 6 members. That may include representatives from municipalities, indigenous communities, institutions, or corporate entities, and of course, parents and community leaders. And what we found working with the various provincial governments is that as they allocate provincial government funding, they have a vested interest in ensuring that these are community-led initiatives, and also that the government funding has some longevity. So we encourage our groups to look at engaging your community, engaging your leaders, and really establishing each project as a community-led initiative. And that goes a long way in your application process. And of course, we have an upcoming childcare co-op boot camp. We're very excited to bring this in-person event to Manitoba. We just had a childcare co-op boot camp in Calgary. And it's a very good experience for persons who are interested in bringing a childcare co-op to your community. Why would you want to come to this boot camp? First of all, we will have legal experts in the room who will answer your questions regarding accessing grant funding, business coaching, incorporation. We'll have an operational expert who can answer your facility planning questions as well, licensing, and also your operational budgeting advice as well. And also in terms of financing, it's key for all our bootcamp events to have that finance, banking. We focus on credit unions, experts in the room that will help you to look at your financing options, because there are many options available to you, right? We also and anticipate that we will have some input also from the provincial government. And we are so excited to be in Brandon, Manitoba. It's going to be on Thursday, November the 28th. Registration is open. You can scan the QR code. I'll also be sending you links to register, but reach out to me directly if you have any questions. And at this time, if you have any further questions you'd like to share, you can also indicate by raising your hand, and we will take questions at this time as well.
Can I jump in? Sorry, I don't remember. Oh, the react button. Oh, okay. Oh, no, I don't remember how to raise my hand. Sorry. Can I just ask a question?
Yes, go ahead.
So how many cooperatives, like childcare cooperatives, are in Manitoba currently? Are there any?
Okay. In terms of the number of childcare cooperatives, I do not have an actual number. There is one group that we're currently working with in Manitoba, but that's information that I can get to you in terms of childcare co-ops. We are aware of one which from or government contact was a good recommended childcare co-op. But in terms of groups that we've worked with currently, we have one group in Manitoba currently that we're working with.
Okay. I'd like to connect you kind of just offline. I'm a founder, a founder.
Okay.
And so I'm looking to invest in the talent of sort of like ECEs and CCAs,
Okay.
as well as if there's like childcare that I can invest in. And so maybe we can probably connect after this. I'll just send an email to you.
Sure, Naomi, you can connect with me directly, and thank you so much for sharing. And it's really encouraging to see funders like yourself come to the fore because we do see interest, and we know that persons will require funding. And for those of you who are not aware, when you're putting in your application to access this provincial grant funding in Manitoba, you are required to show some commitment of that 40% that you need to bring to the fore. So the government will provide 60%. However, you have to show the government that you have either secured the 40% or you have a partner who will say they have an intention to support you as well. So thank you so much, Naomi. I will take your information afterwards. Is there anything else you want to share about your organization now that you have the floor?
Yeah, and sorry I came in a little bit late. I was in a in-person meeting and I was delayed. So we are sort of like a foundation private. We invest the wealth of John and Kathy Phillips, who are based out of Toronto. Their early investment was in Shopify, and so we liquidate their shares from Shopify to be able to invest. We're focused on a couple of populations: formerly incarcerated folks, youth transitioning from care, and refugee newcomers. And then geographically, we're based in Winnipeg, Scarborough in Toronto, and then Newfoundland and Labrador. But we invest to yield good outcomes for people who are in situations of poverty, often kind of within particular systems. Yeah, and so in Manitoba, particularly in Winnipeg, my scope is just Winnipeg. I'm focused on getting people into the workforce. And so childcare is coming up as a challenge for people, particularly people on social assistance transitioning to the workforce. But also just in speaking with the province, there's just a huge gap for the labor force. And so I'm kind of wanting to play both roles where I can support people to access childcare, but also invest in folks getting into that space as well.
Well, thank you for sharing that information. We do know too from the information we've received from the government of Manitoba that Brandon and surrounding areas, there is a need there for childcare. That's one of the identified high need areas too. So we're hoping that you can expand province-wide in terms of looking at groups from that area. But thank you so much for sharing, and I look forward to our further discussions, Naomi.
Awesome.
That's
Thank you.
excellent. So just for the participants, just to know that there are grants available, especially as a not-for-profit, it really opens you up to opportunities working with groups like Naomi's group who are interested in addressing critical social needs. So thanks again, Naomi. I appreciate that. Is there any other question? Not sure if there's anything in the chat. Okay, thanks, Naomi. I have that information. Okay. All right. I do have my colleague Riley who is assisting me. Not sure if you saw anything else before, Riley.
No, haven't seen anything yet, but just to kind of say that if folks do have questions, 5, 10 minutes, an hour, the next day, feel free, reach out to Candice. She's great at answering questions, so always open. But I
Right.
haven't seen anything in the chat.
Okay, thanks, Riley. And thanks for your support today as well. Just to let you know that we do support co-ops. So if you do have groups too who are interested in starting any type of other co-op you can think of, we can also support with that. The point person would be Riley. He's my counterpart. I'm focused on childcare, but feel free to make contact with us. As mentioned before, we will send out this recording. So if you want more details, feel free to reach out to me directly. Okay. Okay, so I'm getting some direct feedback, and just to put my email in the chat, I'll just leave it there for everyone to see. And yes, if you're at the early stage of looking at this issue, we can speak with you. We can give you some guidance. We'll set up an introductory call. If you're at a more advanced stage and you have a steering committee together as well, that is something that we can support you and guide you through the process too, right? There are lots of options there, and the grant funding is available. We hope that this whole program will be extended beyond 2026. And there are some developments from a federal level. You know, the federal government that is indicated that they will be providing additional grant funding through the the CMHC, Canadian Mortgage Housing Corporation. So we're hoping that that funding will also help groups like yourselves who will need access to funding. Currently, the Manitoba grant, it does not cover building acquisition. So if you find a space that you'd like to purchase, the grant funding does not cover building acquisition, right? So there are some considerations as you go through the process, and we will help you through. But feel free to reach out to me directly. I'm just gonna leave my details in the chat. You can email me directly. And we're looking forward also to seeing you guys in Brandon, Manitoba, that in-person event. If you can make it there, get your group together. If you can get a few members from your steering committee, start those discussions. We'll have the experts in the room so you can have your questions answered directly. It's a really a very good opportunity that typically groups may not have access to, legal experts directly asking your financing questions. And for the last two boot camps that we've had in Alberta and also in Saskatchewan, we've had a government representative there, directors who are responsible for the capital grant expansion programs. So that has been invaluable to the groups that have participated. And we want to bring that experience to Manitoba and give you some access to persons who you may never get to meet directly, right? Lots of times you're able to get your questions answered, get a contact. It really does make a difference. So we're encouraging you. If you can make it out to Brandon on November 28th, please make every effort to attend. You will gain valuable information that you'll bring back to your group, even if you're at the early stage, even if it is something you plan to propose to your council or, engage your community. Feel free to reach out to me directly if you have any questions. All right, so I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat, but I just want to take this opportunity to thank you all for your participation today. We do hope you would have gained some insights from our special guest, Dr. Susan Prentice, and also more information about how we can support you as an organization. As mentioned before, at Co-operatives First, we support cooperative development right across Western Canada. We're based in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. However, we are here to support, and we'll connect you with the right people as well along your journey. So we're hoping that we can continue this discussion in Brandon, Manitoba. Okay, so thank you again for your participation, and do enjoy the rest of your day.